Hi, this is Sherry Trotts, and I'm the Director of Business Services for the Waco Independent School District. And today we're going to discuss activity funds and accounting for those activity funds. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that I want to explain is that this training class is not meant to be an all-inclusive class, everything that you need to know for activity funds. We've developed an activity fund handbook for that. It has all the information that you need to learn to how to handle activity funds and cash collections correctly. It covers fundraising, taxable and non-taxable sales. It has all of the forms, and we provide additional information from the comptroller that you may need to know as well. First off, let's go find that form. Where can I find the activity fund handbook? The Activity Fund Handbook can be found on the Business and Financial Services website. Let's go there now. Here we are on the district's website. How to find the handbook. First, we're going to go up to Departments. Then we're going to go down to Business and Financial Services. And here it is, right on the very front page. Under Manuals, we've got the Activity Fund Handbook. This one's already been updated for the 18-19 school year. Once you upload the handbook, the very first thing that you're going to see is a signature sheet. After you're familiar with this handbook and made sure that you understand all of its components, you need to sign and date this signature sheet. You also need to list what organizations that you're the sponsor of. This handbook has a table of contents to help you find specific items that you're looking for quickly. In the very back of the manual, we also have all the forms that you need. They can be found online as well, and we'll go over that soon. And also there's some additional information that you might want to read. We've got a section from the Texas Comptroller's Office on sales and purchases. We've got some information on the Texas Public Schools nutrition policy, and this may interest you if you're trying to have a fundraiser that pertains to food. Being a sponsor for a campus or a student activity fund usually always involves handling of money. It can be from membership dues, selling tickets to a play, fundraisers, t-shirt sales, and there are some very strict guidelines regarding how that money has to be handled and accounted for. So the very first section we're going to go over now is cash handling. Anyone collecting funds will be given a receipt book by the secretary or bookkeeper. This is mandatory. You have to use that receipt book all year long, and then you turn it back to the bookkeeper at the end of the school year prior to leaving for the summer. The secretary or bookkeeper will issue it back to you at the beginning of the following school year. So you must use this book and only this book. You cannot use your own receipt book. You cannot issue receipts through a third-party software program. You can use a third-party software program, but you have to use this district-issued receipt book in addition to anything that you're doing outside of district procedures. This receipt book must be kept. You cannot throw the receipt book away. Once the receipt book is full, you return it to the secretary and she will issue you a new one. Now, we do have a small charge for those receipt books, and they're ordered through the warehouse. And so some campuses feel the need to pass that charge on to your activity fund. So you may see a charge in your account for that. This is what our receipt books look like, just to make sure you're using the correct one. It has a T at the top, and that stands for teacher. And because this is the sponsor's receipt book, the secretary's receipt book looks slightly different. I'm going to read this section verbatim to you because it is so important. Receipts must be given out to each student as they turn in money. This is mandatory. This includes dues, fundraisers, t-shirt sales, etc. Exceptions are for field trips, concession stand sales, carnivals, dances, admission to performances, and other kinds of activities where there's mass volume. For field trips, you can use a class roster to identify which children have paid for the trip. Then that roster will be submitted to the campus secretary or bookkeeper with your daily deposit summary. If you're not sure if you need to issue a receipt for a specific event or not, feel free to call the Business Services Department and ask, and we'd be glad to help you. Cash collected from the students must be submitted to the secretary and bookkeeper on the same day as it was received, or the very next day if the secretary is out. Funds must be stored in a locked cabinet. The bookkeeper will provide you with a receipt after you submit the funds to her. You must keep this receipt. Do not throw it away. And if the secretary doesn't offer you a receipt, demand one. It is required. It is the only proof that you have that you submitted funds and the day that you submitted the funds. The funds collected must be submitted on a daily deposit summary form. The cash needs to be counted in advance of bringing it to the campus secretary or bookkeeper. That person will then recount it again in front of you before issuing you a receipt. So at this point in time, before you have a receipt, that money has been counted at least twice. The sponsor and the secretary or bookkeeper are to count funds together and place it in a sealed bank bag at that time. The sponsor must be present when the funds are counted by the secretary or bookkeeper. This is to ensure that there is agreement as to what those dollar amounts are. Funds are not to be taken home. Do not cash checks out of collected cash. Do not take funds yourself to the district bank. And do not hold revenue and turn it in at the end of the school year. Turn it in as you collect it. Also, do not spend the cash collected from students. Funds need to be deposited, and then purchases need to be made from purchase orders or check requests. Also, you cannot buy items with your personal funds and be reimbursed. How do I turn in money to the secretary or bookkeeper? We've developed a daily deposit summary. This daily deposit summary will record your campus information, the group that you're submitting money for, or the grade that you're submitting money for. We do need your team's employee ID because when the secretary or bookkeepers post this deposit into Teams, there's a section that requires that information. This is a pretty easy checkbox. We think it's all inclusive. If there's something on here that you're doing that's not listed, feel free to check other and write what that is. But we've got dues and fees, lost library books, field trips. Please specify what the trip is for. There might be multiple field trips going on at your campus at one particular time. So if you say, what grade and the name of the trip, that'll help tremendously in trying to post revenue to the right accounts. Any type of donations that you have. Now please, if you have a donation, donations must be properly reported as per district procedures. We have a form with the communications office that needs to be completed. If you've got ticket sales, if you're conducting a fundraiser, any kind of fine that you've collected from a student, here's where you put your total cash, the total checks or money orders, and your account code. Okay. If you've collected cash from a multiple of students, you put the range of receipts here, like receipt number T0001 through T00458. Okay. The secretary will give you a receipt, and we're going to record that receipt number there. And the secretary will fill in the batch ID and the receipt number. You will need to sign and date it when you turn in the money to her. Out of courtesy, please contact the secretary or bookkeeper and let them know that you need to meet today to turn in a deposit. Make sure if you filled out this form in its entirety and that you've counted the funds. Also, the secretary or bookkeeper will then need to count the deposit in your presence. The checks will be pulled out and scanned electronically directly to our bank. So if you have a deposit that consists of both cash and check, please understand this as it will post separately on your account record. And the secretary will give you a receipt. I cannot overstate how important it is for you to keep this receipt. Unfortunately, sometimes we receive counterfeit funds. This is an example of a counterfeit bill that went past the secretary or bookkeeper, past the sponsor, and went directly to the bank and was then detected by them. At a glance, it looks like real money, but if you look here closely, it says for motion picture use only or for cinematic purchases or uses only. Please be careful. They do sell counterfeit detection pins. They're very inexpensive. Office Depot sells them in a 3-pack for only $3.84, which is $1.28 a pin. It's well worth it. The second section that we're going to go over today is conducting fundraisers. We currently have over 75 approved fundraising companies that you can use. Now, this doesn't even count the things that you do on your own, like selling tickets to a dance, a play, doing car washes, participating in those profit-sharing nights with restaurants. The reason that we have this list of approved fundraisers is, unfortunately, the district has had a bad experience in the past with a fundraising company. So before I approve any new fundraising company, I check references with other school districts, and I also make sure that we receive at least a 30% profit on any fundraiser, because we want to make sure it's worth your time and the kids' time, and that we receive a decent profit on any fundraiser that we collect. Now, there are some exceptions to this 30% profit rule. For example, Scholastic Book Fair. The whole intent of conducting Scholastic Book Fair is to put books in the hands of our kiddos at a reasonable price. So we don't have to make a 30% profit there. Another example would be for school pictures. Sometimes a school picture might be the only professional picture that a parent obtains of a child. We want those to be as affordable as possible. Now, you can make a profit on those, but it is not required. That is the principal's discretion. Now, another type of fundraiser we have is not really a true fundraiser. It's really more of a donation. And those are those profit sharing nights at restaurants where everybody that comes in to Chick-fil-A and mentions Campus X that gets a percent of the proceeds that night, and they receive it as a donation. So those restaurants do not have to be approved fundraising vendors. How can I find these approved fundraising vendors? Well, we've tried to make it very easy for you, and so we've actually set up a way that you can have them on your desktop in first class. Now, these are the procedures that you would go to get that added onto your desktop. Now, I'm going to pull up my first class, and I'm going to show you exactly what it looks like. Here we are at my desktop. It's very cluttered, I know, but here is an icon that says approved vendors. So we're going to open up our approved vendors, and we've got two different sections. We've got approved vendors that are Waco ISD bid vendors, and then we've got a list of cooperative vendors. For the sake of this demonstration, we're going to go to the approved Waco ISD vendors. Here they are by category. We have a combined consolidated list that may be easy for you to use, but we also have it by all the various breakdowns of categories, from instructional materials to music supplies to promotional items. But here is a separate one for fundraisers, fundraising vendors. And here they are. We've got the A+ card. It also talks here about what percent you can expect to receive. So you can scroll all the way down, look at all the different types. There's a description here of what type of service it is, candles, holiday items, discount cards. We've got the person's contact information, and again, the percent profit. I've finally selected the fundraiser that I'd like to do for my group. Now what do I do? The first step is to complete a fundraising permission request form. It needs to be completed in its entirety by the sponsor, not by the secretary or bookkeeper. I've also developed an instruction sheet on how to help you complete the form. We also have an option if you need an advance into your account so that you can purchase the items for resale correctly so that you can conduct a fundraiser. This is currently not available for athletic fundraisers, but for all other organizations, you can request an advance to your account for 461 funds only, not for 865 funds. Fundraiser request forms must be approved by the Business Service Office prior to the start of the fundraiser, and we ask that they be submitted 2 weeks prior to the start of the fundraiser to make sure it can go through all of the approval procedures and that there is sufficient time to get those approvals before the start of the fundraiser. If you are purchasing items for resale, please understand that just because you have your approved fundraising permission request form, you still need a purchase order. For example, if you're buying candy bars, you need to have your approved fundraising permission request form. Then after you receive that, you'll get with the campus secretary or bookkeeper to create a purchase order for the items that you're ordering. If a couple of weeks down the road you decide that you need to purchase additional items, like another several cases of candy bars, then you're going to need a second PO. Every time you place an order for an item, you need to make sure that there's a purchase order in place to cover the payment for that purchase. Sometimes there's fundraisers where you're also needing startup change fund. Like for example, if you're having a school carnival, you need some pocket change to be able to, provide change for people who are coming up with large dollar bills. Same thing for perhaps maybe a Scholastic book fair. So if you let me know, or you get with the bookkeeper, she will get with me and let me know how much you'll need, and I can help your campus in obtaining those funds that you need so that it's easy to do that fundraiser. Once the fundraiser has been completed, there's a fundraising recap form that must be completed and reconciled for a profit and loss calculation for each fundraiser. If you're a 461 fund, you will not have access to the funds that you've deposited until that recap has been finalized. Again, this form must be completed in its entirety by the sponsor, but I provided an instruction sheet to help you with that. This form must be submitted to the Business Services Department within 7 calendar days after the completion of your fundraiser. We need to reconcile it, recap, and post your revenue so that you have it to spend for your students. Okay, you're talking about all these different types of forms. Where do I find these forms? Again, we've posted them on our district's website. I will show you exactly how to find those forms. Here we are back on our school district's webpage. Again, you go to Departments, Business and Financial Services, Business and Financial Services Forms. Here we have all the different types of financial forms that you may need. There is a separate section specifically for activity funds. It has your daily deposit summary that we talked about earlier, your fundraising permission request form, your fundraising recap, the instructions for the fundraising permission request form, the instructions for the recap, and tabulation of money collections form. This last form is optional for you to use, but it can help you as you collect funds from the students. Let's go to the fundraising permission request form. This form is pretty self-explanatory, but again, I provided instructions for you. Okay. We need to know, after you fill in the date and time and approved fundraiser name or what store you're going to purchase the items from, there's a place for a description of the type of fundraiser and what you're going to be using the proceeds of the fundraiser for. Principals like to know what they're approving. This is the date range of your fundraiser, and this is very important right here. Time of day if you are selling any type of food-related item. There are specific Texas Department of Agriculture rules regarding when food sales can occur. Okay, I put up here at the top that all of our food sales must be approved by the CNS director prior to the start of the fundraiser. It's again another reason why we ask for 2 weeks in advance to approve these fundraisers. No food sales may take place on the campus from midnight the night before until 30 minutes after the school day ends. So that covers the entire breakfast morning time, and it covers 30 minutes after your school day ends. So that is why it's very important that you specify the time of day in which your fundraiser will occur. Here's a place for you to put your budget code for your revenue account that you want your deposits posted to. And again, once your revenue has been posted to your account and the fundraiser has been recapped, this second line item will tell us what account you want the monies moved into so that you can spend your funds. So here you're going to list your estimated revenue, your estimated expenses, and your estimated profit. If you're conducting a fundraiser where you do not expect to make a profit, please put 0. You can put some sort of note on here too, like for example, if you are doing a t-shirt sale for the benefit of moms and dads and the kids to have a team shirt, but you really are doing it more as a public service, as a benefit to the parents and the students so that you can have the stands filled with your team t-shirts and you only want to sell them at cost, then don't put that you're going to make a profit if you don't anticipate putting a profit. Be as truthful on this form so that we can understand what you're doing. Here's where we're asking if you need an advance for the purchase. Again, it is not available for 865 funds. 865 funds belong to the student groups themselves. They are not district assets, and therefore if we gave you an advance, it would be considered a gift of public funds, and we are not allowed to do that. So I just wanted to explain why we cannot do it for 865 funds. The next section talks about sales tax. Are the items being sold subject to sales tax? If so, is this a one-day tax-free day? If yes, are you using your organization's tax-free day, or are you using your campus's tax-free day? Who's collecting the sales tax? We'll go over some of these items to clarify them a little bit later as far as the tax-free sale days. Here is your certification. As a sponsor of this fundraiser, I have agreed that I've attended a minimum of one Waco ISD offered sponsored training class or the video, which is what you're doing now, that you've read the Student Activity Fund Handbook, and you agree to adhere by the Waco ISD procedures, policies, and guidelines as it pertains to fundraising, purchasing, and money collections. This form will get routed through the various departments that approve fundraisers. All athletic events, fundraising events, need to be approved by the athletic director, the campus secretary, the principal, the child nutrition director for any food-related items, and then finally the business services department. Once the fundraiser has been conducted and completed, you will then need to use the fundraising recap form to reconcile your fundraiser. So again, you go through the district's website to obtain the form. Here's just the date, your activity group, your fundraising activity, the last date of fundraising activity, and here's where you're going to write all of the receipts or range of receipts for all the deposits that you've made. So in my earlier example, I had given an example of a daily deposit summary that was for a specific range of receipts that you've given to the students. You would put that same range there. You would then write the receipt number that the secretary gave you, the dollar amount. Now this grayed out section will be for your campus secretary or bookkeeper to fill out for you. After you have listed all of your deposits, now I understand some fundraisers are only a single deposits. Other fundraisers last a long time and will use up every single one of these lines. If you've used up all your lines, you just need to get a second form and start your list over again. Here you'll put in your grand total of deposits plus any advance that was provided to you by the budget department. So this third item will be the total of all your deposits plus all of your advances. So that is your total amount available for the fundraiser. Then you're going to subtract out your expenditures that you purchased for the fundraiser. You're going to back out that advance amount that you just listed here. Any sales tax collected by the school district, you will put it here. If you did not collect sales tax, put 0. Most of the time, schools just sell an item and they don't think about sales tax. That's fine. Our accounting department will remit it for you on your behalf. You don't have to worry about it. But if you've collected sales tax on your item, you need to list it here. After you subtract your total, less your expenses, less your advance, less your sales tax, then this is your net profit for the fundraiser. We're asking that you list all your purchase orders for this fundraiser and that you attach all invoices or receipts to this fundraising recap as well. Again, it goes through the approval signatures and then your revenue is posted to your accounts. Do I use these forms for everything? What about dues? Those aren't fundraisers. Sometimes we raise funds and they are not fundraisers, or true fundraisers anyway. Example of those are when we collect dues, we collect lost library money, we have a field trip money, we have a dance, we conduct a play and sell admission tickets. And those don't have to be recorded or reported on a fundraising permission request form and fundraising recap form. Non-fundraiser type collections can be posted to your account directly off of your daily deposit summary that we discussed earlier in the presentation. No additional form is required. What else do I need to know? Fundraisers have sales tax implications. You're really going to need to read the handbook to familiarize yourself with everything that is a taxable sale and everything that isn't a taxable sale. But I'm going to go over some of the common collections of funds so that way you have a better understanding of the tax implications. The most common things we sell are candy and t-shirts. Candy is never taxable and t-shirts are always taxable unless you're using one of your tax-free sale days. The reason that I really want to go over t-shirts is because a lot of sponsors have the misconception that if you sell an item at cost and you're not making a profit on it, you don't have to worry about sales tax, and that is far from true. The comptroller still sees it as a sale and they will require sales tax to be remitted on those sales. So if you did not plan accordingly and you did not add an extra percentage to cover sales tax, then you're actually going to have a loss on that t-shirt fundraiser. Remember, sales tax is 8.25%. So if you're going to sell a t-shirt for $10, you really need to sell it for $10.83, or else you're going to have a loss on your fundraiser. Now, dues, field trip collections, and donations are other common collections of funds. Those are not taxable. Sometimes a vendor will collect sales tax and remit it on our behalf. Scholastic Book Sale always does that, and then catalog sales frequently do that too. So you're really going to need to get with the vendor that you're going to conduct the fundraiser with to find out if they are going to remit sales tax on our behalf or not. It's your responsibility as the sponsor of the fundraiser to figure that out in advance. Okay, now let's talk about tax-free days. Bonafide student groups and campuses can have 2 one-day tax-free sale days. Not every activity fund is a student group. If your account code starts with an 865 fund, you are a student activity group and you can have those 2 one-day tax-free days. If your account code starts with a 461, you are a campus activity fund and your group does not qualify unless the principal has given you permission to use one of the campus's tax-free days for your fundraiser. The difference between bona fide student groups and 461 campus activity fund groups is that bona fide student groups have officers, they have posted meetings with an agenda, they take minutes, and the students are the ones that make the decisions, not the sponsors. Campus activity funds don't meet those requirements. Here is a detailed list of everything that's a non-taxable sale and everything that's a taxable sale. Again, this information is provided in the handbook, and so you really need to go over that in detail to make sure that you're comfortable with this. Our final section is other important purchasing reminders. Please understand that you have to use approved vendors for all of your purchases. Now, earlier in the presentation, I showed you where you can find the list of all approved vendors. Please understand that we cannot simply add a vendor to the approved vendor list. They have to go through a bidding process. We issue bids on a periodic basis set to a specific bidding calendar that we have, where we invite new vendors to come on board. So if there's a vendor that you really want to use that is not currently an approved vendor, have that vendor reach out to the business services department, and we will walk through the steps with them on how they can become registered in our electronic e-bidding system, so that the next time we issue a bid for that particular category, they will receive an invitation to that bid via email, and then they'll have the opportunity to apply and become approved at that time. There is an exception to having to use approved vendors. 865 funds are exempt from this because, again, these funds belong to the students and they are not belonging to the school district. So 865 funds can make their own purchasing decisions and they do not have to use approved vendors. Contracts. All contracts must be signed by either the Director of Business Services, the CFO, or the superintendent, not the principal or not the sponsor. Okay? Please make sure that you don't sign any contracts. Another name for a contract is an agreement, a memorandum of understanding, a memorandum of agreement, and then the corresponding acronyms for those, the MOUs and the MOAs, any kind of sales order, anything that requires a signature that is putting a financial obligation to the school district. Okay? Please remember that a purchase order is required in advance before any order is placed. That's for goods, services, fundraisers, it doesn't matter. All purchases, a PO is required in advance. Gift cards cannot be purchased with any funding source. Okay? It is against district procedure. We are not purchasing any gift cards. If you receive a gift card as a donation, that gift card must be properly accounted for in the communication department. Remember, we are exempt from state of Texas sales tax. You need to take a sales tax exemption form when you're purchasing goods. You need to remind vendors that we are sales tax exempt. When you receive goods and obtain a receipt, an invoice, a packing list, anything, you need to receive it and give it to the campus secretary or bookkeeper right away and let them know that the goods are received. Frequently, goods are shipped straight to the teacher. The secretary doesn't know that they're in, so she doesn't receive them in teams. The invoice goes on and on and on, not being paid, and it causes a problem with the school district. So if there's any paperwork that you have, you need to submit it to the campus secretary or bookkeeper. If any goods came in without any paperwork at all, let the bookkeeper know that as well. Let her know that you received it, and that way she can go ahead and receive it in teams as well. We need to work together to do everything we can to ensure invoices get paid timely. I know that you as a teacher don't want to hear a vendor complain to you that they haven't been paid yet for something that you purchased from them. Let's go over 865 funds briefly. Okay, again, these are student activity funds and they belong to the students, not the district. The district operates in a trustee capacity for the funds, but the students make the decisions on how the funds are purchased. Now, in order to make sure that we are compliant with that requirement, we are going to require that all 865 fund purchases include a copy of the minutes from the meeting in which the students approved that purchase. This is new from last year, and it's very important because we need to make sure that the students are making the decisions on how the purchases are made, because that is a requirement of an 865 funds. And we have to be in compliance with that, or else these funds will no longer be able to be 865 funds and we'll have to change them to a 461 fund. Requisitions with the attached minutes will be rejected. Once the minutes are attached, the requisitions can then be resubmitted and routed for approval. Record retentions. Campus Activity Fund records must be kept for 5 years after the fiscal year end of any payment. Agency funds have a shorter time period, and it's for the fiscal year end plus 3 years. Okay, and that's or longer if it's required by CPC, legal, and local. Good rule of thumb is just to keep everything for 5 years. Now, prior to leaving for the summer, sponsors must turn in the receipt book and all of their files regarding the activity fund to the campus secretary or bookkeeper before they leave. You'll get the information when you come back for the following school year, but this is required so that the internal auditor can perform her audit successfully during the summer months. Without the records, it's very hard for her to conduct an audit. P cards. There's some sponsors that have a P card, mainly athletic coaches. If you do have a P card, you must submit itemized receipts with your P card statement, and they must be legible. A signature slip where you signed for the charge is not an itemized receipt. If we don't have that itemized receipt, you'll be personally liable for reimbursing the district for those charges. There's no exceptions to that. We're required to have an itemized receipt so that we can document what was actually purchased. A good tip that I like to tell people is that as soon as you get your receipt, take a picture with your cell phone. That way, if you accidentally lose the receipt later, you can go back to your cell phone and you've got that picture, and that's good enough. Okay? You must also stay within the district allowed meal allowance for students traveling, or whatever the athletic department has established, whichever is smaller. Okay? After you go on a trip, if you've received a cash advance for meals, that needs to be reconciled with the business office upon your return. Say, for example, you calculated that you need, I'm just making up a number, $350 for student meals. You spend $285 on student meals. That difference, that's an excess, plus the receipt, needs to be submitted back to the business office so that we can reconcile. So those are just some little tidbits of items that I wanted to go over because it's been an issue in the past. Okay, I think we've talked enough for today. So if you have any questions, or if you'd like me to go back and train you individually, or if you feel you need additional training on any item in the business office, please get with me and I'd be glad to go over it with you. Thank you, and I hope you have a great day.